Martin Stürtzer just released his new album Protostar on Synphaera, and it's one of those records that immediately reminds you of why his music resonates so deeply. His ability to weave hypnotic sequences with expansive atmospheres creates this sense of traveling through infinite space, and that's exactly what I want to explore today. In this video, we're going to create a track inspired by his style. We'll dive into sequences, textures, and layers that evolve over time, and I'll show you how to capture that feeling of drifting through the cosmos while keeping it personal and unique. Let's go ahead and take a listen to the example track that I provided here. As you can see, I've got a simple sequence coming from Vital here and Stepic. Just a very simple sequence. And that's going through Vital, and as you can see here, just a super simple pluck here. However, what I've done is I've copied this sequence over and then made a second version that's dropped an octave. This is something that Martin does. You kind of feel like there's more to the sequence. Got some slight movement on this down sample, another trick that Martin does. A little bit of distortion in the sequence. Next up, I've got a bass here coming from Serum, which has a little bit of delay on it. Nice plucky bass. And then of course a pad here coming from Serum 2. Now this track is going to be in G Dorian, which is a sort of uplifting version of the minor key. We're going to use G Dorian here to kind of give ourselves a framework to build on. And yeah, I'm really excited about this one. So if you guys are ready for this, let's explore Martin's style here in a Protostar style track. Thank you for being here, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here we are in Ableton Live 12. The goal of today's video is to build a track like Martin Stürtzer from his album Protostar. I happened to be at Martin's studio while he was recording portions of the album, and I have to say, it was really quite an amazing experience. So hopefully you guys can take these techniques and add them to your own productions. All right, I'm using Ableton Live here, but feel free to use any other DAW that you like. And we'll be playing in 91 beats per minute, and we'll be playing in G Dorian. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First thing we're gonna do is start with the sequence. Now I'm gonna use Vital here for this first example, but you can use any other synthesizer that you like, all right? So the first thing I'm gonna do in Vital is change the filter from 12 dB to 24, all right? And then I'll lower the cutoff down a little bit. Now let's shape envelope 1 here. And what we're gonna do is lower the sustain down quite a bit to like 0.25, all right? And add like 1 second of release. This is a classic Martin style envelope that he uses in a lot of his productions where the sustain is relatively low and then it has some nice release as the keys fall off. All right, cool. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this envelope on our filter. So we'll take this and we'll drag this over to the cutoff slider here and let it go. And then as you can hear, we've got a nice little kind of plucky envelope thing. All right, off to a good start. Okay, the second thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take LFO1 and change it from trigger to sync. And then we're gonna lower the tempo to 8/1, and we're gonna drag this over to the cutoff here. So as you can hear now, if I lower the level down, excellent. The cutoff sort of goes over 8 bars and just sort of moves the cutoff slider up and down over the course of this synced tempo here. All right, the last thing I'll do here is I will turn on oscillator 2, and I'm going to add a sine wave here by coming to Factory, Basic Shapes, all right? And then we're also gonna make sure that's going through filter 1. Now we have a nice full-bodied pluck here that we can use to build our sequence. All right, great. If you got that far, awesome. Okay, so now let's go ahead and build our sequence here. I'm gonna use Stepic for this example, but if you don't have Stepic, you can feel free to draw in these notes by hand, all right? So I'll grab Stepic here, okay, from my sequencers tab, and we're gonna drop Stepic into the track. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna play in G Dorian here, but it doesn't really matter if you have Dorian or not. We're just gonna use some Gs, some Cs, and some Ds. So I'll change the root note from C3 to G2, and I'll change the scale to Dorian, all right? I'll lower the steps down to 8 steps, and then we'll change the note length from 16th notes to 8th notes. All right. Now let's plug in our steps here. All right. So what we're going to do is change step 2 to a C, skip step 3. Step 4 is going to be a D note. And then for steps 5 and 6, I will up the octave 1. And then we're going to change 7 and 8 to a C and a D here. Now, if I play this, you can hear that sort of sounds like what it did like in the intro. All right. Now, of course, you can adjust the cutoff here back in Vital to taste. It's opening up a little too much. Just use these little wheels right here. That sounded good to me. The last thing we're going to do is we're actually going to use one of the effects here. All right. So like I said in the intro, one thing that Martin does is you can hear on his plucks, there's a little bit of like downsample distortion. It kind of gives some character to the plucks. So we'll use Vital's downsample here in the distortion. We'll come over here to the type and we'll change it to downsample. And we'll leave the drive here somewhere around the middle, but we'll take the mix here and lower it all the way down. Now we're going to use the LFO to sort of slowly modulate the mix over time. So it sort of opens up that downsampled effect. All right. So we'll take the LFO and we'll drag it over to the mix and then lower its level down to only like 25%. That's cool. All right. Now let's listen to this again. As you can hear as that LFO opens up, get a little bit more downsample. There we go. Nice. Excellent. Cool. All right, so we are off and running here. Now, the one thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use a delay here, but I'm going to use it from my send effect and copy it over as an insert effect. I'll show you exactly what I mean. All right, so I'll take my delay here. This is my Valhalla delay. You guys know this delay. I have used this on so many videos now. It is a dotted 8th note dual delay here. You can see it on the screen. All right, you can feel free to copy these settings if you like. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this as an insert effect. Now, the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to copy it over from my send effects and just paste it here after our sequence. Now we have a copy here on our track. All right, I'll change the mix to 40%. All right, and I'll lower the feedback to 35. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I want sort of a shorter feedback and a shorter delay, even though it's the same length of delay, which is still a dual dotted 8th note delay. All right, and this is going to give us a much more snappier delay. So let's go ahead and listen to this now. Oh yeah, that's perfect. So as you can hear, the sequence coming from Stepic just has a nice short delay on it. And that's very Martin Stürtzer-like. Okay. One of the things that I saw him doing in the studio all the time was using delays and reverbs as insert effects, all right? And then sort of customly molding them to taste on every single track. So that was very interesting to see. It's not that he doesn't use send effects, but he used insert effects a lot more than I thought he would, all right? Cool. Okay, so next we're gonna take our sequence and we're gonna duplicate it onto a new track and then drop it down an octave. By doing this, we're getting a much more full-bodied version of our sequence without disturbing the original notes. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm just gonna highlight my track here and hit Control D, and that's going to copy this over to a brand new track here, all right? So I'll open up the second instance of Vital, and I'll just hold Shift here and drop down my sawtooth and my sine wave down 1 octave, all right? So now if we go ahead, I'm gonna solo this track. If you hear it, it's more like a bass version of our original sequence, okay? I'll go ahead and add some reverb to this from my send effect. Oh yeah. My send effect, as always, is the FabFilter Pro R2 here with the Olancha Farewell preset. You guys can see that. Let's go ahead and also do the same to our original sequence and then unsolo this. Oh yeah. Very nice. I'll rename this initial sequence -12. All right. So as you can hear, both sequences playing at the same time, but one is sort of dropped down, which makes it feel like the sequence is a little bit fuller. You could even experiment with panning one slightly left and slightly right. Let's try doing that. So we're gonna go ahead and pan this one a little bit left, this one a little bit right. Oh yeah. Very nice. So there you go. There's your initial sequence here. Again, we started in stepic here. Beautiful Dorian sequence. Shape this all up in Vital. Okay. Sine wave, sawtooth. Dropped it down an octave. Did a little bit of downsample modulation here. Again, if you don't have a third-party reverb, you can just use the delay and reverb inside of Vital. Okay. So now let's continue. We've got our bass here, and we're gonna go ahead and design our bass, all right? And our bass is gonna be coming from Serum. Now, you could use Vital again, absolutely. But I'm gonna use Serum here because I really love it as a bass synth, all right? So what we'll do here is we're just gonna design a similar style envelope here by lowering the sustain down quite a bit and then adding some more decay and then adding some more release here. So we really get this sort of, plucky, kind of, volume diving sort of bass sound that's just gonna kind of die out over time, all right? And then what we're gonna do is turn on filter 1 here and switch it to low pass 24, or let's just go to normal low 24, all right? And we'll use another envelope here as the sort of pluck envelope, all right? So I'll go to envelope 2, I'll lower the sustain all the way down, and then I'm gonna drag that over to the cutoff here, all right? Cool. So now if you kind of move your cutoff to like around 100 and say 35 Hertz, you can hear, I'm just gonna go ahead and use the same notes that I used in the demo here. Let's go ahead and play this. That's cool, right? But it's not low enough, all right? So what I'll do is I'll come over here and just hit the octave -1. Oh yeah, very nice. So it's got a very nice kind of sustain. Now you could lower the sustain down even further. So it feels like it's really dying down. I like that, okay? Now what we can do is come over to the effects here and maybe we'll add, say, a compressor here. Add some gain to this. Very nice. You can adjust the threshold here. Perfect. Maybe we'll lower the attack down, add some release. Oh yeah, that sounds great. Excellent. So that's all we're gonna do with our bass. Again, if you're using Vital here, all you're gonna do is use a sawtooth, low 24, and then a simple pluck. This pluck, the decay is a little bit longer than it was in our sequence. It's about 2 seconds here on the decay, all right? About 2.5 seconds with the release. Let's go ahead and unsolo this. Oh yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Very nice. Now, for some extra little pizzazz here or flair, what we're gonna do is drop a delay right onto the bass, all right? Again, this is very Martin style trick, which is just dropping delays and stuff and reverbs right onto the track, all right? So what I'll do here, let's open up our Valhalla delay. Again, you could use a stock delay or anything you got here. I'm gonna switch the mode to clarity and we'll go era future, all right? And we'll switch the delay speed to note and we'll use like say quarter note delay, okay? Feedback can be relatively low, maybe like 40%, and the mix can be around 40% as well. That'll work. Let's go ahead and listen to this. I'm gonna solo this bass track. Oh yeah, okay. Let's drop the feedback down even further to 30%. Yeah, there you go. So you could hear by lowering the feedback down, especially because it's a bass, you're really getting that nice kind of delay on it, but it's not overpowering the whole thing. Yeah. There we go. Excellent. So there you go. Now we have our sequence, our drop sequence, and our bass sound in place. That sounds really good to me. Yeah, perfect. Again, these notes, nothing to it. That's a simple 16th note in the middle. It's just a simple 2-bar bass line. Go ahead and copy that if you like. Oh yeah, very nice. Okay, so now let's work on our pad, which is really gonna set the vibe and the atmosphere for the rest of our track. Now, I'm using Serum 2 for this example, but you can feel free to use any other synth that you like, all right? So I'll grab Serum 2 from my synth library, and the first thing I'm gonna do is adjust the attack here. So I'll add like, say, 2.5 seconds of attack, add around the same to the decay, lower down the sustain around 3 decibels, and up the release here to around 3 to 4 seconds. That looks good, all right? Cool, now I'll turn on filter 1 here, and you guys can hear this. It's a very dark style pad. You can open up the cutoff here. Okay. Off to a great start. All right, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna adjust the unison menu over here. So you can click on the gear icon here, and you can see there's a bunch of options in the unison menu. I'm gonna switch the mode from linear to super, and we'll lower down the width to like 50. It doesn't have to be exact here. And then we're gonna play with the detune and the blend. But before we do that, we have to add some voices of unison. So you can click on the arrow right here. Maybe we'll add like, say, 5 voices of unison. And we'll lower down the detune here, like to around, say, 0.4, okay, 0.04. And we'll adjust the detune and the blend here. We're gonna modulate this with an LFO, all right? Cool, so now let's come over to the LFO here, and we'll switch from normal to, say, Chaos Lorenz. We'll leave it on free running. We can hit the monophonic button, and we'll change the rate here from BPM to Hertz, okay? And we'll lower down its rate to, like, say, 0.06, and we'll drag this over to the detune, all right? And then we're gonna lower its amount down very, very subtly. So you can hear, as I play this, that detune is now being modulated by this random LFO here in the middle, okay? That's a really nice effect. We can use the same LFO on the blend here on the Y-axis, which is the up and down, all right? Now, as you can see, it's kind of moving up and down here, all right? Very subtle amounts of modulation. I like that effect, that's good. Oh yeah. Excellent. Now, speaking of the cutoff knob, we're gonna use a second LFO to modulate that on its own. So we'll come over to LFO 2 here, we'll put it in free running, hit the monophonic button, and we'll change the rate from BPM quarter notes to all the way to 8 bars, and we'll drag this over to the cutoff here. That's looking good. And now let's go ahead and, before we do this, before we hit play, we're gonna come over to the effects here and add some volume with our compressor. So we'll add a compressor here. We can leave it in single mode here, adjust the attack, release, add some gain here, maybe adjust the threshold a little bit and lower the mix down. Now, as you can hear, it's got some nice subtle compression here. There we go. Let's go ahead and play our track behind it. Oh yeah. Oh, that sounds really good. That's very Martin-like. Now, let's talk about the Dorian mode, all right? So I'm gonna pause the track for a minute, and we're gonna talk about Dorian. And Dorian mode, chat defines it as this. The Dorian mode is basically a minor scale with a twist. It has a raised 6th note compared to the natural minor. That one note changes the vibe. It makes the scale feel less dark, more open, and more versatile. It's often described as having a minor but hopeful quality, which is why you hear it a lot in jazz, ambient, and electronic music when you want something moody but not depressing. Now, Martin himself has said that one of his favorite keys is D Dorian mode and the Dorian mode in general, which is why I chose G Dorian for this tutorial example. So what I've done here is I've actually created a sort of, pad line here in G Dorian. All right, so as you can hear, I'm gonna play this in just a second. It's gonna start out minor, but then as soon as that 6th note gets raised, it's gonna sound a little bit different than what we normally create here on the channel. Check it out. You hear that? So there's that hint there that there's something more. It's very minor-like, but like chat said, it's hopeful, okay? There's things happening. It feels very open, like anything is possible. I love that. So that's the Dorian mode. Again, a raise 6 here really does a lot, okay? Now, we can either use the internal delay and reverb, or we could use some third-party ones. I'm gonna use some third-party effects here. So I'll go ahead and grab, say, the same delay that I use on my sequence. So I'll come here, let me get out of the way so you guys can see this. I'll copy this by just hitting Control-C or Command-C, and I'll paste this over here on my pad, all right? Now we've got a dotted 8th note delay here, okay? And again, we could use some reverb, but let's use supermassive here. Let's just really bliss this thing out. So I'm gonna grab supermassive. I'll drop it right after my delay, okay? And what we'll do is, of course, like always, we'll switch the mode from Gemini to, say, Libra, okay? And we'll up the delay here, significant amount, change the warp. Up the feedback to around 90%. Then up the density to around the same. Oh yeah, lower the mix down to around 38 to 40%. Oh yeah. Lower the mod rate down. Listen to that. Oh my goodness. So as you can hear, it's those subtle modulations and those moves that we made that really take an average sounding track into the Martin Stürtzer zone. So hopefully now you can emulate this workflow and take it in any direction that you choose. So I'm gonna move on to the extended tutorial, and in that extended, I'm gonna work on the sound design. We're gonna add more parts to this. We're gonna bring this out into a full arrangement, into a full track. So if you wanna join me on there, I've actually provided a new option for you. The extended tutorial is gonna be here on YouTube and on Patreon. So if you wanna join me on YouTube, it's gonna be down below. You can join as a member here on YouTube, or you can join me on Patreon, where I'll offer you the full extended tutorial and the presets. It's up to you which path you take. Either way, I hope you guys join me over there. But if this is where our journey ends, thank you for being here. I truly appreciate your time, energy, and presence, and I hope you learned something. And yeah, I'll be back again soon with more videos just like this one. So in the meantime, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Take good care, and as always, keep your heads in the clouds and your feet planted firmly on the ground. I'm Chris from Signs of Life, and I'll see you guys in the next video.